Hey, what's going on, Jess? How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing pretty great today. I cannot complain. I'm happy to have you on. I'm excited for us to do this. We've been, in talks for a couple weeks now. So
Yeah.
since I heard you on Aid's podcast, shout out Aid. You guys did a great podcast together, and I like immediately texted her and I was like, "Hey, do you care if I interview Jess as well at some point?" And she was like, "Go for it. Just we'll space them out." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I'm excited to have you on. I love your page as a whole that you've started, and I just like what it stands for. I'm big into the festivals and I'm big into the raving community, and I do think that partying safe is such an important aspect of it, and it's not talked about as much.
Totally.
Whether it's as a community or even within like groups of just your friends, I feel like it's not talked about as much. I feel like I'm the friend that's talking about it. Maybe my friend's get annoyed at that, but everyone I've ever brought into raving, since I've been introduced, I've had tons of new friends and their friends come, and I'm always like, quote unquote, their rave dad or something is what I get labeled as. But I've always preached being safe with it and being good with your drug use if they do that. And not everyone does, for starters. I don't want to label like everyone does it, but I always make sure of saying that if they do it, be safe with it. There's right and wrong ways to do it. And yeah, I feel like I'm a real harper on it. So I'm really excited to have you on. I haven't got to talk about this subject that much yet, but I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, I always say that, like you said, that your friends might find you annoying, but I think it's better to be annoying up front. And like maybe some people call you like a party pooper, but like it's better to be a party pooper than to like have something happen to one of your friends, and that's going to be the real party pooper if something like tragic happens. So better to be safe up front. And if your friends get annoyed with it, they will thank you later, 100%.
Yeah, and those that do know me close with that, I've had it happen where it went very wrong with a friend, and that's why I even preached it back then, but he was a very close friend, and I didn't think it would go that way. And it's a long story. I've told it on my other podcast with Aid. I've told it on Festival Tales before. I don't want to go into repeats here, but I've had it where it goes severely wrong, and that's something I don't wish on anybody. I mean, God, that was just, talk about something that scares you to death, really. And definitely not to make a joke, it definitely takes the mood out of the weekend. Your festival weekend is pretty much done after that. You don't even want to think about it.
Right.
So, yeah, it's better to be safe than sorry, no doubt about it. How did you come up with the idea of starting your page? What was the inspiration behind it? I mean, let's start with that.
Yeah. So I was bored during quarantine. I started it back. I started on TikTok. That's where like most of my following is. I have like 80,000 followers on TikTok. Yeah. And so, the Instagram came way later.
That's so funny because I only know you from Instagram. I didn't even see you on TikTok.
Yeah. I'm terrible. I'm terrible at Instagram, to be totally honest. I don't even know. Like I'm happy with, I've got like maybe like 260 followers. I'm happy with that, how I'm doing there. But
with not to get off on a tangent, but with Reels now, you've got a good opportunity.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you. There's a watermark remover that you can get where it removes your watermark from TikTok.
Good to know.
Post your Reels, so you can start reposting your Reels, and maybe you'll blow up on Instagram now.
Yeah, I have reposted a few from my TikTok, but they do have like the watermark on it, so I'll have to look into that.
I swear Instagram kind of sees that, and they don't allow that algorithm.
Ooh, maybe.
Work. I swear about
that's possible.
I mean, maybe I'm conspiracy over here, but but anyway, sorry not to cut you off. So
no, it's fine.
Start on TikTok.
Yep. Yeah. Started on TikTok at the beginning of the pandemic. I was just kind of bored and I downloaded TikTok. I thought it was stupid, but typical millennial, thought it was like stupid before actually like knowing what it was.
Right.
And then like quickly got very addicted to it. But then I also sort of realized what a great platform it is for education. And I was sort of lacking that part of my life. Like I do a lot of volunteering at festivals. Like I'm always at festivals. I usually volunteer at a bunch of festivals and raves. So I'm doing it like all year round. So I was really missing that part of my life. And I still wanted to give back to the community because that's a big part of who I am. So when I realized what a great platform for educating TikTok is, I also realized there really weren't that many harm reduction educators on TikTok, and there weren't any that centered partying and nightlife and raving. So I was like, this is a really great opportunity. Like I said, I'm typically really bad at social media. So I had a lot of like self-doubt in doing it, but, I just went for it. Didn't really think anything would come of it. And then one of my videos just blew up, and TikTok is really like, it's got like that virality. So it shows your content kind of like Reels on Instagram. Like it shows your content to people who aren't following you. If it sort of, if it goes with their algorithm. So I got like 2.6 million views on one video about using fentanyl test strips. And I had like 15,000 viewers or followers overnight.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's a difference between TikTok and Instagram. I don't really think that kind of stuff happens on Instagram.
Yeah, definitely not anymore.
No,
definitely not anymore at all.
Yeah, so
that's the appeal to TikTok is that you can go viral overnight with just one video.
Right, exactly. So, and yeah, I've seen people get even bigger followings after just one video. But I feel like I kind of cracked the code with Instagram because I have with TikTok, because I kind of have like a niche. So people saw that video and they were like, oh, well, like this is the kind of content that she posts and I'm really interested in harm reduction. So I'm going to follow her. Like it can kind of go either way depending on your page. Like if you have sort of like a page where it's just like a personal thing, you're just posting things for fun, and you have a video that goes viral, like you might not get as many followers, but if you have a niche and people are like, oh, that's what I'm interested in, you can really like your follower count can just go up exponentially with like one viral video. So anyway, that's what happened to me. And I was shocked and I was like, all right, well, I guess this is like, people are interested in this. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And that was a year ago. And now I have 80,000 followers and an Instagram, which is, it's doing all right.
I mean, it is just crazy that the algorithm on TikTok is so scary. You mentioned like, oh, it's addictive. Yeah, I mean, like I've been sucked into it. You're like, it's showing you things that you didn't even know that you liked. You're like, I do like this. What is going on? Like,
and it knows you so well, like scarily well. Like sometimes these videos come up and I'm like, how did they know that? Like they're like thinking things for me before I even thought them.
I do agree. It's got something where it can connect the dots. Like, oh, you like this, and this. Well, then you'll probably like this, and you're like, I've never watched this video or anything like this in my life, but I do like it. Like, what's going on? Yeah, it's crazy in the way it does that. I do know it has like there were a bunch of reports coming out at the beginning that TikTok was some backdoor thing and for your data, and it does.
Yeah.
For the first time,
aren't they all though?
They definitely all are. Like, well, for the first time today on my iPhone, I got asked like, will you allow TikTok to track you on other apps? And I was like, no, I don't want that.
Yeah.
But it was the first time. I mean, I've had that. I know Apple for some reason tends to be really good with their security and making apps not share your data as much. I know they might have just came out with something new on their iOS 14, but other than that, I mean, it's throwing me things, like you said, throwing stuff. You're like, what the hell? I
know. I kind of figure like at this point, I'm sure someone has my data. Like I find it hard to care because does it like it matters, but also it doesn't matter because it's probably already happened, you know?
I totally agree with that. I also think you can just do very like small things to throw off those algorithms, because the algorithms aren't, they're not a do all tell. They really aren't. I mean, they tell a lot, sure, but like if you just do one thing out of the blue, it's gonna throw the whole algorithm off, for at least a couple weeks or so.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, like I'll get ads on Hulu all the time, right? And they've got it where like, hey, you could pick from one of these ads, these customizable ads. Pick
Oh
what you
yeah.
think you're gonna like most. And for that, I just never pick. I just let it. It's always on the first one. It's always the first one.
Yep.
So it's like, all right, they'll never know. They'll never really know which one I want to do. And
Exactly.
then what is it with TikTok? Like every once in a while, I'll just like search something absolutely random, like just has nothing to do with what's on my For You page. And I'm like, there you go, do something with that. Like I know for my actual job, I looked up some like construction things just to get an idea for my job. And then of course the next time I go on TikTok to watch the videos I've got some construction stuff, and I just swoop right past it, and the thing's probably like, what the hell's going on? But it's funny. I mean, there's definitely things you can do to mitigate how accurate it is. And you the beauty of it is, though, you do, for TikTok at least, it very much highlights that you feed the algorithm. I mean, whatever
Mm-hmm.
you like and you comment on and you stay on, you view the longest, is what it's going to show you.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because the other apps don't really, like, they do that, but they don't do it to where it's as noticeable. Like,
It's not the main feature.
correct.
Like
Yeah.
Instagram has the explore page, which yeah, it's pretty accurate. I guess it pulls in from like who you follow and what kind of tags you use and all that kind of stuff. But that's not the main draw of the app. The main draw is like your people that you follow and seeing their content. Whereas I feel like that's actually a benefit and a drawback of being a creator on TikTok rather than Instagram. At least personally, and I think it's probably the same for most people, is that I more often look at my For You page than like my follower. Like there's like a followers page and then a For You page, which is just like, the algorithm.
Yeah.
And then you have like your follower or following page where it only shows you people that you're following. And so I look at the For You page more than my following page. Sometimes I'll look at my following page, like sometimes, but definitely more often the For You page. So I think that's like the main
and it
feature.
opens on the For You page too. So I know exactly. I don't ever look at the follow. I have like 20 people I follow. I don't ever look at them.
Right. And so that's kind of like why it's a drawback to be a creator on TikTok. I think advertisers, not that I'm doing it like for like money or anything.
Right.
I'm doing it because I love it. But like, I think if you were trying to monetize your platform, I think it's harder on TikTok because your followers are going to be less likely to see your content than on a platform like Instagram.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally get what you're saying. You have the bigger potential to explode, but yet your follow. Right. Yeah, absolutely. I see what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're interesting. I mean, they're taking over for sure. Those tech companies, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
We got a little off topic there, but we're talking about drug safety. That's what you like to talk about, and I don't want to touch on it too long, but what's some basic tips for just drug safety at festivals?
The number one thing that I always tell people that I'm all about is testing your drugs. Because we do not have a regulated supply, your drugs could be anything. And that includes if you're getting your drugs from someone you trust. I can't tell you how many times I have tested someone's drugs and they're like, oh, I'm sure it's fine. Like, I got it from my guy, he's always good. And it like ended up not being what they thought it was, or there was, something sketchy in it.
Right.
And now, especially with fentanyl being a big problem, it's so important to test your drugs with a reagent test kit and a fentanyl test strips. The second thing I would say, honestly, just staying hydrated, but not overhydrating. We need water for life and for energy, and
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I just
so basic, but yes, agreed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, honestly, a lot of this is just like basic, like functioning and like just taking care of yourself, because a lot of the times, if people like always scoff at me when I say this, but like a lot of the times it's not the drug itself that's dangerous. It's other things that are going on. So like the environment, or just the fact that, the war on drugs itself makes drugs dangerous. Because, if we didn't have the war on drugs, we might have a regulated supply. And then like what's going on in your body, how you're treating your body. So all those factors can make a drug experience dangerous. It's usually not the drug itself, it's how you're doing it. So in that regard, and I guess another tip would be making sure that you're going low and slow. So taking your time, taking a low dose, just to see how your body reacts to it, and not redosing if like you don't feel anything immediately. You can like look
that rush. People want that want that rocket to the moon versus like this consistency. However you want to phrase it, but I totally. I've seen that before for sure. Where I just not feeling it. Let me just take a lot real quick and they're chasing. I think the main thing I've seen, and you've seen yourself, is people chasing the high that they maybe once originally had or something. I felt this way this time, so I want to get that exact same feeling again. And that's something you gotta, everyone should know from the get-go is you'll never have the same feeling. You just never will. You might come close to it, but you'll never be able to recreate what it was, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of drugs, well, especially if you're using them repeatedly, so you'll have your tolerance will go down. But even if you're spacing it out, sometimes you just never will get that same feeling again. And I agree, a lot of people chase it, and that can, sometimes lead to addiction problems. But less severe for say someone's just, the only time they use is like at a festival, that can still cause problems. Cause like, for example, with MDMA, you can lose the magic really quickly. Especially if you're taking it frequently. Like a lot of people will take them multiple days in a row at a festival, or if they're going to like a festival every month, and taking it for like every month during the summer, even that. And even if you're not taking it like during the winter time or the off season, like you can still lose the magic, from taking MDMA like that.
Absolutely. Now I've got a question, because you bring up MDMA. I always hear about 5-HTP. 5-HTP is you just take it after you feel better, yada, yada, yada. I don't know much about 5-HTP. What do you know by chance what exactly that does? Is it really that beneficial? Because some people make it seem like it's going to fix everything. Like, and I have no idea. So I don't want to speak on it. But if you have any knowledge, I'd love to talk about that, because that's something I think, like I said, people probably heard of it too, if I've heard of it. So.
Yeah. I think it's, first of all, it's not going to solve everything, especially if you are a frequent user and you're taking really high doses. Like it's not going to be your savior. I'm sorry to say. What it is, I believe, is it's a precursor to serotonin. So people think that like if they take it, it's going to like just rebuild all of their serotonin, and it might assists with that a bit. A lot of what we know about harm reduction is like very anecdotal. So like we're kind of just going off like the best that we can do. I don't know if there's, I doubt that there's been any actual like studies testing using 5-HTP after MDMA. And if there have been, then I haven't heard of any. And I think that I would have by now if like there actually was something out there about it. But yeah, long story short, it's not going to be your savior. But I also don't think it's going to hurt you to take it. As long as you're waiting 24 hours after you rolled, I think it's a good idea. I think it might help a little bit. I don't know for sure. It might just be a placebo effect also. But you know, regardless, if it helps, it helps. And it's just not going to be, it's just not going to fix every
question.
problem.
You said take it 24 hours after. Why is that? So
that's another thing that's like, I don't know, like in the harm reduction community, I've seen people like ask that question a lot of times and I've never like seen an answer. I think that it has something to do with the potential to cause serotonin syndrome. But I don't think that there's, like I said, any actual like evidence of that. I know people who have taken it and have gotten like really bad headaches or taken it like less than 24 hours, like the morning after, and have gotten like really bad headaches, and stuff like that. I don't know anyone that's had serotonin syndrome in general, but I've definitely never heard of anyone getting serotonin syndrome from that. But I think there is some concern about that. So
the headache thing I have heard of. Funny enough to mention that. And now I don't know if it's because, so I know like on the bottles, because 5-HTP you can just buy at the store. You can just buy it at Walmart. I know on the bottle it says take 2 capsules and then possible side effects would be headaches and nausea and stuff like that. Now I've had friends, I've actually taken it once, but I broke it up. I took only one at a time. One when I ate, another one when I ate dinner later that night and had no problems. But I have absolutely heard of the headaches thing and like bad headaches by taking 2 right away or something. So that's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah. And I, you know, almost everyone I know that uses, like that is the one supplement that I think most people who use Molly use. There are others that are, there's a really good, if there's a website called rollsafe.org. And this website gives like pretty much everything you need to know about taking MDMA. It's a really great resource. They have a MDMA supplement regimen, like down to the minute of like when you need to take everything pre-roll and post-roll.
Wow.
So there are a lot of different supplements that you can take. I don't know. I don't think any of these have actually been studied, but I trust this website because I am familiar with one of the contributors of the website. So I definitely trust it. And I don't think that they would put anything on there that would hurt anyone. So the bottom line is like, yeah, sure, take these things. They might not help, but I don't think that they're gonna like, or it's not gonna hurt either. So you might as well.
And just regular vitamins and make taking an emergency and getting your body replenished is also going to help. Getting rehydrated, eating, you know, all that stuff is going to play a significant role in helping reduce it. Go exercise. And that's one of the big things I've noticed. It was exercise. I mean, it's like magic. I mean, not in a sense of just sweating and getting those endorphins moving and getting your body back into this moving state, rather, you know, I don't know for everyone, but that's something I certainly feel better after a festival. Sometimes I'll go exercise hard and I'm sweating and I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling good. So hard to go do that. I know that the motivation sometimes for people isn't there, but definitely something I enjoy. So.
Well, that's why I always say like it is so important to get enough sleep at festivals because you will feel that much better. Like I know, like I'm preaching to the choir. Like, of course, like everybody, like in theory wants to get sleep at festivals, but like who actually does that? But I think it's really important for people to know that like that is one of the most important things you can do as well. A lot of the times, you know, when people come home from the festival and they have like, you know, they say that they're like hungover, they have like a come down. A lot of the times that's not actually from, or, you know, sometimes it's not from the drugs. It's actually from sleep deprivation. So like you will feel that much better after a festival if you get enough sleep, and then you'll be able to, you know, maybe get some motivation to work out, and that'll make you feel even better. And then I also always recommend like during the festival stretching or like participating in some of those yoga classes that they sometimes have, just to keep the body moving, keep the body like, you know, loosen it up and make sure that you're stretching so that you don't get any injuries, because you're literally like walking around and dancing for like hours. So that's important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned on like your first thing, to circle back a little bit, drug testing, was you mentioned fentanyl. You mentioned that, and we all have heard of it. We've all heard of, you know, the what is it, the DEA or the ICE confiscating, not ICE, that's not it, but DEA confiscating, you know, X amount of fentanyl from somebody, and the effects of it and what it can do. What are some of the things to look out for, to pay attention to, and overall, let's just talk about what, you know, the bad parts of fentanyl and what it can do to people and why we should be wary of it.
So backing up a little bit, I know you said that everyone's heard about it, but just in case, if somebody hasn't heard about it, fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. It actually can be prescribed for really, really severe pain, but a lot of it, especially the stuff that's on the black market, is made illicitly. And it is very, very potent. It is, I think, 50 times more potent than heroin. So it is very, very powerful. And as you can imagine, for someone who doesn't have an opioid tolerance, it is very easy for them to overdose. And it doesn't take that much, only like a few grains of like sand for someone to potentially overdose on fentanyl. So when sort of the fentanyl sort of started appearing more on the black market, it was only really showing up in other opioids like heroin and pills. But now we have a problem where it is showing up in cocaine and other party drugs. And the problem with this, like I said before, a lot of people who use like stimulants or other types of party drugs usually, or I feel like usually they don't have an opioid tolerance. I don't want to speak absolutely because sometimes that is the case, but a lot of the times they don't. So if you don't have an opioid tolerance, it's going to be really easy to overdose on fentanyl and die. So as I said before, there are test strips that detect the presence of fentanyl. And we need these. So maybe people have heard of the reagent test kits, like from DanceSafe or Bunk Police, where they're like little chemicals and you drop stuff on like a little sample. The test strips are different. And these are needed because with the reagent test kits, they only detect like usually what drug is the most prevalent in the sample. So like if you've got something that's like 80% Molly and like 20% meth or something, really only the Molly is going to show up. You probably won't be able to tell that there's meth in there at all. And with fentanyl, because it is so potent and such a small amount can be lethal, a reagent test kit is not going to be able to detect a lethal dose of fentanyl in any type of drug. So we need these test strips because they are very, very sensitive and good at picking up and detecting fentanyl in a sample. But because of that, we have to test the entire sample of whatever we're going to be consuming. And that involves putting all of your drugs in water. And a lot of people don't like to hear that because who wants to put their drugs in water? But that is the most effective way to be able to tell if there's fentanyl in your drugs. There is another way to do it, and that is just testing the residue that's stuck to the inside of the bag. And this is the way that we test it in the field, because we obviously can't put people's drugs in water because, let me back up. The way that you get the water out is to evaporate it. So you have to wait. Essentially, if you're going to be testing it the way with testing the whole sample, you have to like just leave it out and like wait for the water to evaporate. So you kind of have to like plan ahead with that. But we can't do that at festivals. So we test the baggy residue. As far as I know, it is still an effective method. It's definitely better than not testing at all. So, if you have concerns about like putting all of your drugs in water, you can do that. It's just not going to be as reliable. So that we at DanceSafe, we've been selling lots of fentanyl test strips and really encouraging people to use them as much as possible.
So how do these strips work? I'm sorry. So you take a baggie with residue, whatever the person has, you put water in the baggie? Go ahead and explain.
Yeah, so you got it right. So you put your whatever drug in another container so that you have the original bag, you put water in the original bag, and then you take the test strip, you dip it in until you see water. Water gets pulled up by capillary action. So you'll kind of like a paper towel, how it kind of just like, you see it like rising. It's the same principle. So you'll see the water being pulled up, and then you wait about a minute for results. And then one line means that the strip did detect fentanyl, so it was positive. And 2 lines means that it did not detect fentanyl, so negative. The opposite of a pregnancy test, apparently. People always whenever I post about fentanyl test strips on TikTok, they're like, wait, this is so confusing. It's the opposite of a pregnancy test. So just so people are aware, if you've ever used, yeah.
That's the immediate comparison. Oh my goodness, that's hysterical.
But it is. So the test strips actually were originally designed to be used with urine drug screens. So I guess, people would pee in a cup and then they would dip the test strip into the cup, and same principle. So and then they start, fentanyl started becoming more and more of a problem, and I think they repurposed them for this.
Gotcha, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, what are they typically cutting and putting fentanyl into now? Is that
so cutting implies that it is intentional, and we don't actually know if it's intentional. So I just like to say that it's contaminated rather than it's cut with something, because it, like I said, we don't know how it's getting into the drug supply, especially with drugs, to answer your question, like cocaine, MDMA, pretty much everything, like anything has a chance of having fentanyl in it. And, people are always like, well, why? Like, why would someone put a drug that could kill someone, or a drug that has such an opposite effect from what the original drug, like with cocaine, like cocaine's a stimulant. Why are they putting an opioid in a stimulant? They have such opposite effects. And like I said, we don't know for sure, but there are a few theories. And I think the most plausible theory is that when people are distributing and packaging certain drugs, oftentimes they will be doing multiple different kinds of drugs. And so if they are using the same equipment to package, like say they have a scale and they're putting the drugs directly on the scale and then they don't clean it afterwards, there might be a few little crumbs left over on that like unintentionally, improperly cleaned equipment, and that could be how it's getting in there. So I personally think that is the most plausible theory, that it's just accidental cross-contamination. But there are a few other theories. So one of them is that they're using it to stretch out the product. So obviously cocaine is a pretty expensive drug. And honestly, it is maybe besides heroin, probably one of the most contaminated drugs that I have ever tested. Like, I don't think I have ever tested pure cocaine, and I've done a lot of tests in the field. So people think that they might be using it to stretch out the product because fentanyl is really cheap and really potent. So that increases the weight without much additional cost. And then the other theory that I've heard people say is that they're using it to get their customers hooked and coming back for more, since fentanyl is even more addictive than cocaine. I don't see how either of those theories make sense, because if they're intentionally doing it, like, they have to know that, like, a lot of people who are buying cocaine probably don't have an opioid tolerance, and they might be killing their customers. And then also, who's going to go to that person anymore if they heard that someone OD'd from their stash? So I just don't see why it would be an intentional thing. I really think that it's just an accidental thing that's happening, unfortunately.
Very interesting. Yeah, those are interesting theories. I would definitely lean toward the one where they're doing it to cut costs and stretch out the product. I mean, I'm sure they've done that in the past with multiple other ways, with other things. That wouldn't surprise me, but I always would rather give people the benefit of the doubt, and hopefully it's accidental. It's just,
But the bottom line is it's happening. And if you look at sort of the graph of cocaine overdoses, and then this is on, I think, the NIDA website, there's a graph, and it has cocaine overdoses, and then there's a line where it has any cocaine overdose that also had a synthetic opioid in the person's system, and that has just skyrocketed in the past few years. So it is happening. I don't think it's happening on as much of a scale with other drugs like MDMA and like ketamine. I think it is happening a lot with meth. But yeah, I still think it's important to test everything for fentanyl, because it's worth it. The test strips are literally $2 each, and and you can get them for free at a lot of places. Like, if you have a harm reduction organization in your area, a lot of the times they will give them out for free. I know that where I live, the Department of Health gives them out for free. So, they're very accessible, and they're cheap and easy to use, and it's just worth it. It's literally your life. And I just
$2 for peace of mind.
Exactly. Yeah.
I agree with that. I mean, I agree with the regular testing, let alone this. So that's something new I didn't even know about, was that you could test for fentanyl. I would have just assumed it was in a reagent or test kit, something like that.
So that brings up a good point, and sort of a problem that I've been seeing with a lot of test kit distributors is that they will list fentanyl as something that you can test for on their, like, in their color chart.
Right.
And in reality, like, yes, you could test for fentanyl with a reagent test kit. But like I said, such a small dose is needed to fatally overdose. Most of the time it's not going to show up there. So it's not even worth listing it in the color chart. At least if you're going to do that, put a warning that, like, that, fentanyl, such a small dose is needed to potentially overdose. I feel like that gives people a false sense of security, because if they get like one reaction, they're gonna be like, oh, cool, like, this didn't react for fentanyl, so I'm cool. I don't need to use fentanyl test strips. And that's just not the case at all.
Right. No, it makes sense. Yeah. I guess it's interesting. I would have never thought about that. And it's like a very gray area, because they're like, oh yeah, we're testing for it. But then, like what you're saying, it's like, okay, hypothetically you are, but reality you're not. And
yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very gray area there. I don't.
So like if all I'm saying is like if you're gonna put that on your color chart, have a huge warning that like, you know, what I just said in better words.
No, I agree. Are there any new policies or anything coming out that are looking to address these issues you might know that maybe we don't, that you can shed some light on?
So the landscape of the legality of testing kits is changing. Backing up a little bit, test kits, including reagent test kits and fentanyl test strips, are illegal and considered drug paraphernalia in many states, majority of the states.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Federally, they are legal, but on a state-by-state basis, I think there's only like 16 states where they're actually legal. Now, I think with the opioid overdose epidemic, people are starting to come around and realize that these testing materials are a public health tool. And they are a necessary public health tool. So they are needed, and they're not drug paraphernalia. It's like there are health departments giving these things out. So I am seeing different states coming around to removing the language in their drug paraphernalia clauses that discuss, like, it'll say like testing, analyzing, something. So a lot of states are like kind of like scrapping that language and taking it out. I was involved with a couple of campaigns to get test kits legalized statewide, nationwide, and in my state. And so I've sort of been on the back end of this initiative, and I'm excited to see some of these states starting to legalize or decriminalize these materials, because it's so important.
What is the pushback from the other side that is not wanting them to be legal or not wanting to allow them at events? What is the pushback? I mean, I can't think of a logical reason why.
Stigma. Period. So I just think it's stigma.
In a sense that if we legalize these, we're endorsing the use of drugs?
That, or that it's like a slippery slope until we start legalizing drugs. You know, you can't ration with the irrational. I guess that's an opinion that I have, that these are necessary public health tools, but I just think it's irrational to have them be considered drug paraphernalia when they're literally saving people's lives. And I just think that a huge reason for that is stigma against people who use drugs.
It's like they have a very old view and a very not old but stubborn viewpoint, and the fact that they're like almost willing to ignore that people are using these with or without the test kits. They're kind of, whoever it is, I'm not, whatever side it is that's arguing we shouldn't have test kits, is just flat out ignoring the fact that these people are going to do it with or without the test kits. So the argument is, why not do them when we know they're safe versus when we know they're not safe? I mean, I get it. I think it's a fairly logical argument. Like we just said, people are going to do these drugs, whether they're legal or illegal. So we're not saying they should do them, but let's at least make it to where they know it won't kill them.
Yeah. And we have decades of evidence that, if the war on drugs was going to, if drugs were going to, or if us fighting against the drugs were going to win, the drugs won the war on drugs. Let's just put it at that. Like,
oh yeah, no doubt. I think we all knew that.
Yeah. And so, and it's been going on for decades. And I think it probably got even worse once they really started to crack down on these things. And I know that with like alcohol prohibition, for example, like alcohol use and addiction went down after all of that. So, and if you look at like Portugal, they've decriminalized all drugs there, and their ODs and addiction rate have gone down. So like we know that like people are going to use drugs regardless, but it's about being compassionate and like giving people the resources and education that they need to help themselves, because using drugs is not a one-way ticket to OD and addiction. We know that. So we just need to help people and give them the resources so that they hopefully don't get addicted or hopefully don't OD. And that, you know, that's not only things that have to do with drugs, but it's also like mental health and, you know, making sure people aren't in poverty and homeless and like all, like, you know, all these systemic things go into it. So it's a much larger problem. But yeah, you nailed it. Like we know that people are going to use drugs regardless. So why not just, you know, help them not die?
Yeah. And I think, I do think maybe the other pushback is the state itself doesn't want to be, you know, the ones to administer it. But if they looked at it from a purely like, you know, they legalize it and the businesses make their kits and their test kits, and that's how we distribute it. We don't, some health organizations might, some might not, but I know that seems to be always the biggest pushback with any type of policy that's more progressive, let's say, is that they don't want, the state shouldn't have to pay for it, you know. They shouldn't have to pay for the decision people want to make. If people want to take the drugs, they should also be able to pay for the test kits type of thing. You know? And I see that argument, but the idea of making it just illegal for that reason, I don't understand. But I do agree with the sense of, if you're going to do it, you should also be able to pay for the kit you want to make sure you're doing it right.
Yeah, and I don't think that, I mean, I think that it is like a city to city decision whether, or a state to state decision whether they're paying for these things. I know a lot of cities are paying for fentanyl test strips. I've never heard of any city paying for reagent test kits. A lot of health departments don't even know what they are. Like there's that, and that's a big issue, is that a lot of these public health officials aren't even aware of reagent test kits. So it's funny because like in the rave scene, most people know about reagent test kits and don't know about fentanyl test strips. And then like in the real world, it's actually the opposite. A lot of people know about fentanyl test strips, but don't know about reagent test kits. So I do a lot of educating people like in health departments about reagent test kits.
When we were discussing the policy, was that regarding fentanyl test strips or reagents or both? Okay, both. That's what I thought. I just want to make sure we're on the same. All of a sudden it dawned on me, maybe we didn't clarify, but okay, cool.
Yeah, cool. Both. Because the language is very general. It just says like testing and analyzing. Some states, because of the overdose epidemic, are introducing legislation that only legalizes fentanyl test strips and not reagent test kits. And I think that part of that is just lack of awareness. And the other part of that, I think, is just because I think, you know, the overdose epidemic it's an epidemic right now. So people are just more aware of it and it's a bigger issue. So, you know, they're going to do the thing. I think it's also a acceptability thing. So maybe they're trying to do the thing that they think most people can get behind. I feel like if you know, these people are going.
That's a big thing in our politics today. They'll do whatever they can do to get behind the vote.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's important. And that is a public policy strategy. I know like in some states with this legislation, they're almost using that as like their Trojan horse to like get reagent test kits legalized. So it's sort of just like, I think that what they call incrementalism. So they're just sort of like building on like policy by policy until they get what they want, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely makes sense. It's always interesting, the politics behind stuff like this to me, just in general. I mean, with anything, there's always some pieces in the background moving to help. It's always interesting to me in that sense. Odd question, but someone was bringing this up to me the other day. Is it possible to test your LSD? Is that something people can test for? And if so, what are they testing for in that sense? Because I truly don't know. It's not something I'm familiar with at all.
So there's a couple of different tests for LSD. The one that I use the most often is Ehrlich. And basically what you do, if you have a blotter, you can just cut off a real tiny corner. And, the same way that you would with any kind of powder, it's just you're taking a really small sample of it. You drop the chemical onto it and then wait for it. You're looking for it to turn purple. And what this says, if it turns purple, is that it's not 2,5-I-M-bomb, which is a potentially dangerous substance and has caused a lot of adverse reactions with people consuming it thinking that it is LSD. So when it turns purple, that doesn't necessarily say that it's LSD. It actually just says that it's an indole. So that could be psilocybin, DMT. I'm blanking on some other ones, but
they're testing for it not, and it says it's not the M-bomb.
Yeah, 2,5-I-M-bomb.
I'm not familiar with that either.
It's some kind of new psychoactive substance. It has some psychedelic properties. I'm not like super familiar with it. All I know is that a lot of the times it is misrepresented as LSD. And it can be on blotter. So people take it and it can cause like an overdose or like some kind of like adverse medical reaction.
Does it last the same time? Does it cause a adverse mental reaction? Because I know with LSD, they're considered more of like a mental than a physical feel, right?
I think it can be. I think it can be both psychological and physical.
Interesting.
I'm not sure though. I've never like seen or like handled anyone that was having an adverse reaction to this. I just know that it's not. Yeah, I just know that it's not good to get in place of LSD. Like you don't want it. So the test rules out 2,5-I-M-bomb. And besides like, there's like a host of different research chemicals that are similar to LSD and would turn purple with the Ehrlich reagent. So there's another reagent that is apparently out there. I've never used it. It's called Hoffman. And this can apparently distinguish between those different research chemicals. I think unless you were like a really experienced person who took LSD, I don't think you would really know the difference between any of these research chemicals, but some people like to know. So if you really want to know, there is that other option out there. And then you would be able to distinguish between all of them. But with Ehrlich, like I said, it only tests for indoles, but other indoles are like I said, psilocybin and DMT, but you wouldn't find those on a blotter. Like they're not active at like the microgram level. So you just wouldn't find it on a blotter. So those are the two that you can use. Going back to the 2,5-I-M-bomb discussion, the other way that you might be able to tell if that's what you have, we have a fun little rhyme. If it's bitter, it's a spitter. So if you take acid and it has a really bitter metallic taste, like almost like a penny, spit it out because that could be 2,5-I-M-bomb. LSD should not have a taste. There might be like the ink, if there's like ink on the blotter, that might have a very, very slight bitter taste. And then also like if you have like a gel tab, sometimes those have kind of a little bit of a taste, but you could tell like this is really bitter and metallic, so spit it out.
It's funny. I was writing down that saying. If it's bitter, make it a spitter. Is that what you said?
If it's bitter, it's a spitter.
It's a spitter.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. Well, you learn something new every day. I didn't even know.
We have we have a lot of rhymes in harm reduction. Hydrate or dihydrate, start low, go slow. What are my other ones? Test it before you ingest it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Are there any what's it called? Any nonprofits, for-profits that people can, look into that are doing good research and doing good and trying to get these test kits legalized and or even at events trying to help out? Are there any of those that you might know of that people can get behind if they feel so after listening to this?
Lots. So the big one that I volunteer with is DanceSafe. They are a nationwide 501c nonprofit, and they go around to music events all over the country. And what they're most well known for is providing drug checking at these events. So you can go up to their booth. Usually it's like a yellow canopy. So it's pretty easy to spot it. And you can bring your drugs to their booth. They have free, non-judgmental, confidential drug checking. So they have reagent test kits and fentanyl test strips at the booth, and they will test the drugs for you there and give you sort of their assessment of what kind of drugs you might have. And they also provide lots of other health and safety services. So you can go to them for free water and electrolytes, free condoms and sexual health and consent information. Usually they have candy, like all kinds of stuff, pretty much like sunscreen, anything you can think of that could keep you healthy and safe at a music festival. Usually they have them at the DanceSafe booth. So if you're at a festival, go check them out. A really cool thing that they're also starting to do, they were going to do it this past festival season, but obviously couldn't because of COVID. But they just bought 2 FTIR machines, which will, with reagent testing, like I said, you can only test for like the most prevalent drug in the sample. You cannot test for potency or purity, or be able to tell like quantity. So like you can't say like, oh, this drug is like 50% MDMA, 50% meth, or like whatever. With this machine, you can know. It'll be able to break down the chemical structure, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but it basically tells you like how much of each drug and like what kinds of drugs are in the sample that you give them. So it's really cool technology. It is really expensive, and I think they're the first organization in the United States to be doing this kind of thing at festivals. They already have it in Canada and the UK, I believe, but in the United States, DanceSafe is going to be the first organization to be doing that. So I'm really excited about this, and I can't wait to like volunteer at a festival where this is going to be happening. I'm like so excited. So check out DanceSafe, donate to them. They are like, all the money that DanceSafe gets goes right back into helping the communities. And they also, forgot to mention, they sell test kits. They're like, I think they're one of the biggest, they are one of the biggest test kit suppliers in the United States. And I find them to be really trustworthy, and just, they're doing awesome stuff for the community. So check them out. And then another nonprofit is the Zendo Project. They are a psychedelic harm reduction organization, psychedelic peer counseling. So if you're having a difficult psychedelic experience, you can go, they have like a comfy like dome, or like, they got like pillows and stuff. And you can go there, and a trained peer will sit with you and sort of help you get through this difficult experience that you're having. And it's not exclusive to, if you're like actively in that state. You can go if you've if you had a difficult psychedelic experience and you're like, say you're like having trouble integrating back in, you can go there and sit with someone who's a trained volunteer, and you know, they will help you through that as well. Yeah, so those are the two big, not like nightlife harm reduction nonprofits that I can think of. And then for profit, there's Bunk Police. They also sell test kits. Usually you'll see them like roaming around the festival or like the campgrounds, offering to test people's drugs. So yeah, so they're also a really good resource for test kits.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all those. I'll make sure to get Dance Safe up in the bio so if people want to check them out, they can. Honestly, this has been awesome. I've had a great time. We've done about an hour or so, I believe. I don't have a timer over here on my end, but this has been awesome. I love this conversation. I think this is such an important conversation to have, and it was so informational. I mean, I learned a bunch of stuff today that I wasn't even, expecting or had any idea of. So
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed it. I hope you can come on again in the near future. We can always talk about more, and if there's anything new that comes up in this world of the of the other side of drugs and keeping things safe and getting public policy passed. That's something I would love to discuss more and have you on again. So keep it up. Honestly, I love it all. Keep it up. Keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this absolutely. Tell people where they can find you on TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff.
Yep. Party Safer with Jess on TikTok and Instagram, and at Gmail if you feel like you want to email me for some reason.
and I'll make sure to put it
oh, and I'm also going to plug, I just launched a website, partysaferwithjess.com. I started a blog. So I'm sort of going to be using that as a way to talk about the different health and safety features of the different festivals that I go to, in hopes that I can sort of hold event producers accountable, so that they start to prioritize these things even more, because I think it's so important. So yeah.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to plug your socials into the description as well, just in case something happened with the audio or anything. But thank you once again for coming on. I appreciate everything you do, and all the knowledge you're passing on to everyday people like myself. So thank you so much.
Thank you.